Hi, and welcome to VIBEZ Daily. This is a daily devotional curated by VIBEZ Church to help you practice the way of Jesus and be all that God has called you to be. You have joined us for our year-long series titled Devoted. Acts 2:42 tells us that the followers of Jesus were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. This podcast was created to provide context and commentary for what you read each day. Just before our friends begin discussing today's reading, we want to invite you not only for fellowship, but for prayer as well. We have created the VIBE Daily Chat Group to offer you fellowship and a community where you can state your observations, ask questions about the reading or the podcast. You can join us by downloading the VIBEZ Church app in your favorite app store. Click Join the Conversation and join us today. And finally, we hope that you can join us for prayer. Prayer happens Monday through Friday, and more information on that can be found on the VIBEZ Church app under prayer. Now, let's begin our conversation on today's reading.
All right, welcome back to the VIBEZ Daily podcast. It is day 67 of our Devoted series, a year-long series through Scripture, as we're going to read the entire Bible in a year this year. And so really excited to do that with you and also with all of my friends. I am here today with my wife, Victoria, my friend, Nakia, and we are continuing to journey through the book of Joshua. Have actually made it through the halfway mark of this book, and the people of Israel are in the promised land, and we are starting to finally there. Have conquered 30 plus kings at this point, in lands, and so they're finally starting to get their inheritance. Left off with really Caleb requesting his inheritance in his land, and we're gonna kind of see him receive that here in chapter 15. But start to give out the land, and very interestingly, start with Judah's land, which we kind of have seen as a pattern. Judah tends to lead and go first, despite the fact that he was not the firstborn son. Matter of fact, the firstborn son took his land on the other side. We're going to talk about Reuben right now. But yeah, so we kind of get his allotment here in chapter 15, and again, kind of hear from Caleb. Anything that just jumped out to you guys as we deal with Judah's inheritance specifically in chapter 15?
I actually had to go to my study Bible and look up a map at the back of the book or back of the Bible, because I was really trying to figure out how big these lands were. And what I noticed was like Judah's land was really large, that territory. I mean, of course, as we looked at the genealogies, we realized that Judah was like the largest tribe up to this point. So it kind of made sense that they had such a large, but I had no clue what these cities were in terms of proximity to each other and how large and the boundary points. And so it really did help me like just visualize it. And just to see how big they were.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it really was, especially in relation to some other tribes, right? And what they were allotted. And it's huge. But then, as we mentioned yesterday, I love the fact that Caleb kind of sought out the land of where the Anakites were living. These big, large people that he wasn't afraid of, but some others were, and many others were afraid of. And even like give a challenge, right? Of like, whoever can go up and strike, I'll give my daughter to. And so I think it was lovely that like he had such confidence, and you see that in both him and Joshua, which makes a lot of sense. While those are the last two standing here, in the promised land.
Good. That whole kind of verses 13 through 19 were just kind of interesting as a whole, not just kind of Caleb driving out Anak, as you mentioned, like he said he would do. But even just kind of like, his daughter trying to get a little bit of some extra like land and stuff out of it. But yeah, it was great to see that fulfilled, to see Caleb kind of do his part, to get the rest of that land and to offer, that blessing to Othniel. I'm gonna say it and give my best effort there on his name, but anything else then? I mean, you kind of mentioned how large the land was. I mean, Judah, as we'll get through, is pretty much the only tribe that has like one chapter kind of to himself,
Right.
right? On the land that's given to him specifically, because the others are kind of broken up into a few different sections and whatnot. But yeah, anything else that kind of stuck out to you with what Judah was offered?
Yeah, I was also just grieved when we got down to verse 63 and how the Jebusites that they said they could not drive them out, and I'm just like, why not?
Yeah.
We took out Anak and his folk. Like, why? What hindered them from removing them? And so once again, as I mentioned yesterday, it just seemed like these little thorns that they are leaving around that will come back and bite them.
Yeah.
Good. Like I said, we'll come to find Judah. This will be significant. Again, not to spoil too much, but the people of Israel don't always remain united as a kingdom and whatnot, and Judah becomes a primary territory in what we come to know as Israel. And so, these lands are extremely significant for the future of Scripture, and a lot of places that we'll refer to and see, and kingdoms, and even Jesus's life and whatnot are listed right here, kind of in this chapter in this land,
which is a lot of land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to 16, and my Bible kind of titles it Joseph's Inheritance. It breaks up, if we recall, Joseph's two sons are kind of considered tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. And his tribe is ultimately split into two, and that keeps the number 12 because ultimately the Levites don't get any land, right? They're kind of given cities within everyone else's land. Anything that just jumped out to you guys about how Joseph's descendants and Ephraim and Manasseh, kind of how their lands were broken up?
You know how many years it took me to understand that math? I was trying to figure out, like, how did he have only 12 sons? But then we count Ephraim and Manasseh. That's supposed to be 13. They never say 13 tribes. They only say 12 tribes. And all these allotments, all these things they're doing 12. And then it finally dawned on me just a little while ago. That was like, oh yeah, because the Levites, the Lord took the Levites as his own.
Correct.
And they're no longer considered. It took so long, y'all. I was struggling for so long trying to understand what was happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a side note of my confusion. But to answer your question, if there was anything in this chapter, it would be verse 10. Because once again, these thorns that keep coming up to me is that they did not drive out the Canaanites that lived there. And they lived in the midst. And it just seems like they think that it's okay to just make them do forced labor. Like, oh, we're making them do forced labor, they'll work for us and everything is going to be okay. And it was like, no, it's not, because these people are not good for you.
Yeah.
Like, and they're not, like, they still have their customs, they still have their ways, and these are the very things that will entice you.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought, to that point, right, you would think they would have learned from when they were forced laborers that, like, just because someone's forced labor don't mean they're always going to stay there and be there at some point. There's probably be a rebellion of some sort.
Right.
But yeah, that did seem to be, even back to the Gibeonites, a few chapters ago, the ones that kind of deceived them, that, like, their response was, all right, you guys will be our woodcutters, or, whatever. Like, there was this response, if I can't kill you, enslave you, was kind of like the response there. And obviously, as we know, kind of going forward, it doesn't really work out for anybody in that way.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to say, like, the people could not conquer them, or the people could not drive them out, or they did not drive them out, like, they just did not. But like I said, when the charge to Joshua was like, he will drive them all out, like, the Jebusites was included in this list, the Canaanites was included in the list of people that the guy said that, like, I will drive them out before you. And so part of me was just like, well, what was the hindrance? Like, were they once again relying on their own strength? Because of course we know that you can't do it on your own. Or would they allow the Lord to go before them and do it, and do whatever the Lord asked of them?
Yeah.
So
Good. Well, in 17, we kind of continue the rest of Joshua's inheritance. We got Ephraim in 16. We get West Manasseh in those west of the Jordan. So with the rest of the other tribes, Manasseh is getting their inheritance at this point. So again, just a quick refresher: the Reubenites and part of Manasseh, half of that tribe, stayed back.
And Gad, right?
And Gad, the Gadites stayed back and did not cross the Jordan. I mean, they had to cross to help conquer, but they were going to keep land on the east side of the Jordan. So this is for the rest of those. The tribe of Manasseh are getting their land specifically on this side. And then it just jumped out to you guys here in 17 as the rest of Joseph's descendants get their land.
I love it seeing Our Lady show up again, though. The daughter.
Yeah.
He's all again, yeah. Yeah, the daughter, we mentioned them a couple of times, how they just keep coming up in scripture.
Yeah.
But
They were there in Numbers. They were there again, right? Like that. These a refresher. Maybe you're just picking up with us here in Joshua, kind of in our series, right? You're referring to chapter 17, verse 3.
Right.
It's kind of where it starts. That Noah, Milcah, Terah, Hagla. Can't say these names correctly, but
You're doing great.
yeah, doing my best here. And Mala, I kind of skipped her. That they had approached Moses about their land, right?
Yeah.
To say that like our father died due to his own sins, right?
Right.
Everybody, right? His own sins. He wasn't with, Korah and them that was rebelling, but he did die due to his sins. And want to make sure that we still get an inheritance, and they were required to still marry within their tribe, but were given land specifically. And so I think to your point, what I love, because we see their story, we see Caleb, we see these like which really is kind of a theme of Joshua as a whole, is like God fulfilling his promise.
Yeah.
Right? Like that just seems to be the theme of this book, is like God doing what he said he would do.
Yeah.
He's fulfilling his promise. And so I love that Joshua doesn't like skip over any of it. He's like, I want you to know God fulfilled this promise, and he fulfilled that promise, and he fulfilled that promise, and he fulfilled this one, right? And so this is just another example of like, oh yeah, we didn't forget about them.
Yeah.
He fulfilled his promise to Rahab. He fulfills his promise to Caleb. He fulfills his promise to the daughters of Zelophehad, right? And says, no matter what, all those people, Joshua ultimately fulfilled the promise to him as well, into the Israelites, that I'm going to fulfill, I'm going to do what I said I would do.
Yeah.
But they still didn't drive out the people.
Keep pointing out, huh? Everybody got left. You're going to make sure we
Verse
know.
12. I'm like, all right, Canaanites is still there. Forced labor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like, go ahead.
Just real quick, I'm still just encouraged that the Lord sees women.
Yeah.
Because I was, I think I was, I don't know. I believe Eric posed the question, because we had some hard text to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deuteronomy.
Regarding women in Deuteronomy. And so it's just a sweet reminder here of Joshua still fulfilling the promises. And I'm like, oh yeah, like the Lord still considers women for them to receive this inheritance. And as Eric said, Joshua being the one to carry that out. It was just a sweet reminder.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a one-time thing. It's just the Lord considers women.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah.
No, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah.
I do love that there's this like conflict between Ephraim and Manasseh, or in my version it says the people of Joseph. It just groups them together in verse 14, how they come to Joshua and say like, why have you given us only this one portion of inheritance, this one small lot? And although we're like really numerous, and he's just like, wait, like you go and tear down the forest and clear ground for yourselves, and you take over. And they're like, well, the hill's not enough for us, and all the Canaanites, they have chariots of iron, And he's like, I don't care. Like, in my mind, this is how I read it. He's just like, no, there's a lot of y'all. You have power.
Yeah.
Clear the forest.
Yep.
Yeah.
And take over those Canaanites.
Yeah.
He's like, though they have chariots of iron, though they are strong, like, go take your land.
Yeah.
It's like, he's kind of like, they're kind of like, oh, we can't do it. And he's like, if y'all don't get up,
Yeah.
like,
No,
I'm
for real.
old. I've been running around fighting for y'all for last how many years? Like, I done took my old self up here and been fighting. If y'all don't get up and get your land.
Yeah, it's funny because it reminded me of, when I read it, it reminded me of, like, when I was a kid and I go to my mom's and be like, Moms, I'm hungry. Like, there's nothing to eat here. And it's like, did you look in the
It's
fridge?
food in there.
Like, yeah, but there's just nothing to eat. It's
Stop
like, if
playing
you don't
with
go
me.
in there and take that turkey meat
Yeah.
and that bread and that cheese and make you a sandwich. Like,
Precisely.
you got all you need in there to make you a sandwich.
Yes.
But I'm just like, I'm hungry. Like,
Hungry.
I can't, there's nothing to eat. I'd rather just starve, right?
They complain
He
about
just
it.
complained. And that's what it just reminded me of. It's just like, he's like, no, the land is there and it's yours.
Yeah.
You just refuse to do what it takes to go get it.
that
That's
Like,
real.
That part.
it goes back to, because we've talked about this, right? Whether it was the priest putting their feet in the water or whatever. Like, God has stuff for us, but it always requires us to do something,
Something.
right? Like, it's very rare, and I'm only using the words very rare because I don't want to overgeneralize and say always or never, but it is very rare that God just ever hands you anything
Yeah.
without you also having to do something, right, to receive it. And so, like, yeah, that's what it did. It made me giggle because, like I said, I was thinking that's what it sounded like. It just sounded like they were like, there's nothing to eat, and it's like the fridge is full. Just make you something.
Just go in there.
You have everything you need.
Exactly. It reminded me of when you were speaking, that whole, like, faith without works is that that, like, you have to put in action what you say you believe, and what you say, like, you have your trust and hope in.
Yeah.
And so, like, just go. I mean, it's so much easier for us to say, I've never been to war, so like, I can sit here and be like, just go and take the conquer. But, obviously I've never strapped on the sword and chop sueyed anybody or anything. So,
Good. Yeah. So, chapter 18, we kind of get to this community assembly kind of as Shiloh, specifically. And so, we're going to get into ultimately Benjamin's inheritance as well in this, but anything kind of in this first part of 18 that just jumped out to you guys in this Shiloh, this reference to Shiloh.
Yeah, I just feel like this is another talk, kind of like similar to what he just said to this tribe of Joseph, the tribes of Joseph, that, like, he just once again is like, okay, guys, how long will it take for y'all to go and take possession of this land? Like, get to it. I want to divide it up. We're gonna cast lots here, and go take it.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was almost as if like they were just still waiting for, like, Joshua to just do it for them.
Yeah, the leader or something.
Yeah, like they hadn't done enough. Like like it was just like, I'm waiting for you to do it all. And I can't help but feel like it reminds me a little bit of I want to be careful here. But it reminds me a lot of, like, the American church today, in that, like, we've become so like seeker focused, like trying to make our ministries and churches so comfortable and appealing and, like, to draw people, right, that, like, we've created a community of people who just want everything done for them, and, like, are just really they really struggle when they're required to do something on their own, right? Like, I mean, we get people who can go to church every week but still struggle to pray, or go to church every week and still like struggle to study their Bible, and, like understand scripture. Like they're so dependent on the pastor to feed them or to preach, right? Like that they just don't even know how to eat or feed themselves. And like that's what just reminded me. It's like they're so dependent on Joshua and God to like do for them that they don't even know how to just go out on their own and trust God, right? To trust God on their own to go conquer the land, right? It's like they're dependent on Joshua and his relationship with God and his trust in God to go do that on their behalf. And so like, you see that play out where it's just kind of like Joshua's like, I was never meant to be your God. I am not your God. Like God is with you. I've told you time and time again, don't be discouraged, be courageous, right? Do not be afraid, right? And go because the Lord is with you. And it's like, now I need you to go walk that out. I need you to go live it. And like I said, I feel challenged in that, because in the church, I'm like, that's what I want to say to the people of God is like, okay, at some point you're gonna have to go live out these words yourself.
Certainly.
At some point you're gonna have to read this and go, you're gonna have to believe that faith without works is dead, right? At some point you're gonna have to believe that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, and that you're more than a conqueror, right? At some point you're gonna have to actually go therefore and make disciples, right? And baptize them. Like you're gonna have to go do that on your own. You have to live this out, and I can't be there for you to do it all the time. And I feel like Joshua was really challenging the people in that way.
Verse 3 reminded me of Jesus. I know I'm jumping way ahead. On the boat, in the storm. It's like, y'all can command how long must I be the one to speak to that storm? And so like verse 3 is like, how long are you going to wait before taking possession of the remaining land of the Lord that he is giving you? It's like, this is like a theme throughout the Bible I'm seeing and in the church. Where we have the tools that are presented to us, but would just rather our leaders or someone else do it.
Exactly. Like we've been given the tools.
Yes.
We've been given the instructions. Yeah, I feel like I see Joshua getting a little bit fed up. Kind of like how Moses was. Like, Lord, how long are you going to let me put up with these people?
Man.
How long? Just take me out, Lord, because they doing a lot. And so... Here, Joshua, you could see he's old, and he's like, how long are you going to put off taking your land?
Goodness. God help us, man.
Well, they start to assign the lands through lots. So kind of end of 18 and into 19, where we'll end today. We can kind of take these two chapters together. The other 9 tribes I believe we have left here, or 7 tribes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tribes that we have here start to get their land. Anything that just jumped out to you guys as they get the rest of this land kind of in Shiloh, and it's divided and assigned to them? Anything that you guys saw here through the end of 19?
It's just a lot of land. It's a lot of places. It's a lot of land. I mean, for the fact for these to be like cities, Yeah. I'm like, oof, this is a lot for them to spread out.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was interesting that, like, as you called out before, how large Judah's land was, that like Simeon's land is kind of in Judah's land, right?
How large it was.
19 verse 9, it says the inheritance of Simeon's descendants was within the territory of Judah's descendants, because the share for Judah's descendants was too large. So Simeon's descendants received an inheritance within Judah's portion. So I think you called out earlier how large that area was, and it was so large that Simeon had to kind of inhabit some of it themselves.
The tribe of Dan had a little trouble taking their possession, though. Down in verse 47. I didn't see that with the other land that was given.
Me neither.
Yeah. Everybody else kind of just got their land, and But mine says they slipped out of their control.
Oh, that's good.
So the territory of the descendants of Dan slipped out of their control. So they had to actually go and fight for it back, right? To get theirs. Which is also interesting because they're the last tribe to get their land, right? Assigned to them specifically. It concludes with Joshua getting his land as well. And they give him this city. Timnath Serah kind of was in the hill country of Ephraim. And it says it's where he requested it. And he kind of rebuilds this city specifically. And so... yeah, I thought it was interesting that, like, again, this is kind of the conclusion. All the lands are finally given out. Everybody has their place to be and their space to be. That was given land. But tomorrow we'll find out there's still a group left that doesn't get any land, and we got to figure out where they're going to go. But anything else here kind of at night to you before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, I think it's the first time I noticed that this tent and meeting was placed at Shiloh. At the very end of chapter 19.
Yeah.
And so, because sometimes I was like, okay, so where is the tent at this point? Like, where do we set it up and leave it? But yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Lot of geography in today's reading. So, we talked about our favorite genres earlier this week. Geography was not one of them. But, I encourage you, do Victoria's Instructive. If you have a study Bible or if you just want to Google it, get an idea of how this is mapped out. Give me some context for the size of this land, as well as even kind of its relation to what still exists and what's still around. But that's kind of the conclusion of day 67, our reading today, and we'll pick up tomorrow to finish the rest of Joshua, chapters 20 through 24. But appreciate you guys joining us and look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. But until then, take care.
Thank you for joining us for the VIBEZ Daily podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or download our favorite, the VIBEZ Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the Bible. Take good care.